This is a once-in-a-lifetime genius with the strongest magic and swordsmanship talent. He awakened the world's strongest spell power at the age of 5. At 6, however, he was permanently imprisoned in the abyss of hell by the imperial royal family due to his world-destroying power. Yet, the only one who cared for him, his sister, in order to secure his future freedom, actually agreed to marry the beastly 4th prince of the empire for their useless father. Meanwhile, during the decades I was exiled by the empire, I encountered the most important teacher of my life. Under his guidance, I became the strongest sword god renowned across the continent. But when I learned that my only sister, who once cared about me, had now become a plaything in the hands of the royal nobles, I turned into a demon in an instant, becoming the hell demon god in people's eyes, slaughtering millions in the entire imperial family. But I also exhausted all my strength in that battle. When I saw my younger brother, Jack, suddenly appear before me, I was shocked by the scene before my eyes. At the same time, intense pain began to spread throughout my body. I never imagined that to protect the people from the royal family, long fallen into darkness, I would end up exterminating the entire imperial royal faction, and personally slaying the foolish, tyrannical emperor. Yet now, I'm facing my own younger brother's blade, and even being called a demon by him. All the hatred weighing on my heart vanished in that moment. I said to him, "My brother, use that sword in your hand and strike me. In this way, you won't have to face me, your demon brother, anymore. And you'll be hailed as a hero for slaying a demon. So, seize this one and only chance. After all, if I wish to leave, no one would dare stop me." Just as I was ready to end my own life. I never expected my brother, sword raised a moment ago. The next moment, I saw him kneeling in front of me, giving up the chance to kill me, and he began to cry out loud. I used the last of my strength to say to him, "Jack, my brother, you're still young. Don't live a life filled with regret like I did. Go back and tell everyone. The demon has been eliminated by you. It's time for the war to end as well." Then, I gradually lost strength amidst his cries. I collapsed. I never expected my life to end like this. As my consciousness began to fade, my heavy eyelids slowly closed uncontrollably. As I gradually forgot how to breathe, the sounds around me suddenly stopped. In that moment, just as I was about to die, I thought of my sister, renowned across the continent for her beauty, and my brother, who has tormented me since childhood, as well as my father, who once doubted if I was his own child. Even memories of being cast out from the Balandier family, then rising to become the strongest magic swordsman on the continent, all flashed through my mind like a carousel of images. But now, I can't tell if this is reality or a dream, because I felt a sharp pain piercing through my face again. At this moment, I find myself within the Balandier family of the Kingdom of Teslan. Yet, as the youngest son of the family, I have received no support from any vassals or factions. This has left me living in this lavish place of exile, and I have lost the right to connect with the outside world. However, the butler before me is the only one in the Marquis who treats me sincerely, my sole support here, because besides him, the entire household is filled with family members watching over me. At the same time, I am also contemplating what I can do, but at just 14 years old, not only is my magical power sealed, but I don't even have a trace of mana. At this moment, compared to the other nobles my age, I am nothing but a complete failure. Just as I was in distress, a dark figure appeared behind me. Then, a heavy blow struck me before I could react. The one who suddenly attacked me was none other than my second brother, Pelin Balantier, who had unparalleled talent in a past life but couldn't cultivate it. It was all due to his threats and beatings. Even though decades have passed, the memories of a life that resembled hell are forever etched in my mind. It is precisely because I gave up my dignity and resistance that I managed to keep my life. In the end, this caused even the servants in the family to look down on me, because in their eyes, I, the third child, am simply unworthy. The only person in the family I could rely on and who cared for me was pushed by this guy in front of me into an abyss from which she could never rise. And this guy deserves to die 1,000 times over. So in this lifetime, I've decided not to compromise, because in this rebirth, I am determined to change my fate and my sister's, and my actions at this moment have shocked everyone. What happened next stunned them even more. Because my second brother, a third-level dancer, but I threw him over my shoulder and slammed him hard onto the ground. When he looked at me in horror, I teasingly said to him, "Oh dear, my good second brother, shouldn't I give you a hand?" But at that moment, he burst into a furious rage, striking the 3 moves of Madaji, the dancer, and said to me, "You ignorant brat, this is looking for death. In my past life, I was a hellish demon who slaughtered countless beings. But in this life, I will no longer end my life at the cost of others' lives. I also won't let those who treat me sincerely pay any price. Even when facing my second brother, who once bullied me, I will no longer sacrifice my dignity for peace. Because now, I will change the future. Those who once insulted me will pay a painful price. Even if he's the future heir of the family, he will never take everything that belongs to me again. I don't mind if they're filled with fear of me. For those who try to stop me, I'll make them understand what it's like to live in hell. However, my second brother, a third-rank dancer, is now terrified of me, this so-called worthless failure. It reminds me of, since the eldest sister married into the empire, she poisoned our father, who was a marquis. Even after she inherited the family head position, the entire family perished because of her. Furthermore, because of her, the opportunities that my sister earned through happiness were wasted. I can't imagine what kind of feelings my wise and kind sister had when she married the beastly fourth prince of the empire. Perhaps my sister has known all along that the moment she married into the empire was the moment she fell into an endless abyss. But does this bastard before me, along with my deceased father, know my sister's fate? I wonder if they still have the courage to face our mother, who has long since passed. At this moment, he, like a lost dog, reminds me of what I saw while traveling the continent in my past life. The expressions of people consumed by the fear of death. But just as I was about to deal with this scumbag, I was stopped by my butler. He said to me, "Master Jack, for your own future, please let him go this time." Under my butler's persuasion, I ultimately chose to let my unconscious second brother go, but I was also very clear. After letting him go this time, everything I have done today will surely spread throughout the family. But so what? After all, this is the first declaration of war I have issued against the family's power. As the useless youngest son of the family, I actually beat up my brother, the heir. This has infuriated my father, the Marquis. Send my orders for the third son to come over. He will learn of this news soon. He began to change his clothes and prepare to leave. Butler Allen said he would accompany him. He waved his hand and said it wasn't necessary. "I can handle it myself." The butler could only helplessly accept. "As you wish, young master. Please ensure your safe return." Soon, he arrived at his family home. The people around him were discussing him in whispers. He hadn't been looked down upon like this for a long time. Just as he was about to push open the door to his father's room, he was stopped by the guards. Didn't they see that the third young master was coming? In the past, he would have immediately backed down upon seeing such looks. But now it was different. Jack smiled and said, "You'd better not look at me with those eyes. Be careful, I can dig it out for you directly." While the guard was still wondering why he spoke like that, he was kicked to his knees by the young master. "How dare a dog stop its owner from entering the house? Did your father ask you to do this?" After saying that, he turned and left. It seems his father wanted him to stand outside and reflect on himself first. The guard hurriedly asked, "Young master, where are you going?" He turned to his father and said that if he had something to say to me, he should come see me in person. From now on, don't call for me over every little thing. I'm very busy watching him walk away. The guard thought that this young master had gone mad. After his father learned of this news, he sighed that his youngest son seemed to have changed a lot. At that moment, Jack was sitting in his rose manor. He knew his father would definitely come today. And sure enough, before long, his father arrived with a group of people. He looked at his father who had come right up to him. He thought to himself, in my previous life, after I ran away from home, I almost died by his hand. He even went so far as to cast the child off to a scoundrel to secure his power. Truly a greedy person, unable to fulfill his own ambitions. How could someone like him deserve to be my father? He crossed his legs and greeted my father with a smirk. My father glared at Jack, demanding why he acted that way. But Jack wasn't intimidated, and responded that he simply wanted to punch him. Second brother's mother scolded him harshly for daring to be so rude to the family head. Jack crossed his legs and said, "Where is that dog barking from?" His father instantly became menacing. The aura of fighting spirit erupted from his staff. It reached towards Jack. He knew his father wanted to check whether he had trained in fighting spirit, but he didn't possess such a thing at all. His father was surprised. How did his youngest son defeat his brother without fighting spirit? Could he have a natural talent for martial arts? Jack took a slow sip of juice. He neither confirmed nor denied it. The father told those around to stay quiet. He looked at Jack and said, "I thought you were useless, but it seems you might have some value after all." Jack stood up and replied, "So if I'm useless, I'm not your son?" Looking at his defiant son, his father asked him if he was doing this now to earn his approval. Jack seriously told him he didn't care about that anymore. His father turned and walked away, saying he understood his thoughts. Jack was surprised that his father left without getting angry. He shouted forward, "Right. Second brother's mother. Aren't you worrying too much about second brother? Is that why your wrinkles have deepened? You should take care of yourself." These words made him furious. Although he's not a pervert, seeing him angry inexplicably makes me happy. So he deeply bows to the two of you and wishes you a safe journey. I won't see you off. Have a pleasant evening. His sister knelt in the pouring rain for 10 days and nights, just to beg the shameless fourth prince to spare her family. The emperor and the fourth prince felt compassion and granted her request. This was the first version he heard. Even locally, there are stories passed down. However, only Jack knows just how tragic the truth about his sister is. At that time, he was 17 years old, and during his 10 years of running away from home, the kingdom of Arad was destroyed. Atlantis annexed the entire western continent, becoming the most powerful empire. His family barely survived for a while, but that was because his sister learned that her family was imprisoned. She knelt before her husband, Prince 4, pleading for mercy for her family. But because her sister was a lowly test subject, her plea was ignored by the emperor and the prince. That's how the earlier scene unfolded. Just as her sister was thanking Prince 4 for saving her family, he pressed her against the wall, coldly telling her not to get too complacent. "I can make your family disappear from this world at any time. It's just not the right time yet." The fourth prince smiled, "So you must obediently listen to me." In this way, his sister became the fourth prince's possession. Everyone treated her like a servant. What happened next is predictable. As time flew by, the fourth prince, who lost interest in his sister, mercilessly abandoned her. He took the opportunity to lock her away in another residence. Her family probably perished around that time as well. When he returned, everything had changed. While questioning the fourth prince who took his sister, he learned the truth. In the end, the fourth prince, knowing he was doomed, provocatively said that everyone knew your sister was very alluring. Hearing this felt like a knife to his heart. His sister's suffering was far worse than anyone imagined. He picked up the branding iron, saying, "How could you do this to my sister?" His agonizing screams echoed loudly. Jack tormented him with it over 1,000 times. "You Atlans, the royals truly are a band of good brothers. Since that's the case, you all betrayed my sister. Now that she's dead, the entire empire will go to the grave with her. Everyone bearing the name of Atlan, everyone tied to the royal family, will fall by his sword. The queen and princess, the wife of the third prince, and the wife of the fourth prince, anyone related to them, must all die. Not a trace of their existence in this world can be left. This is the reason he has gone mad. He who is called a monster. He slaughtered the entire empire. As he stood amidst mountains of corpses and rivers of blood, he hated himself for not becoming stronger sooner, for not drawing his blood-stained sword earlier, for failing to protect the person most true to him. This cruel father even personally sent his useless young son to prison, making him scrub 100 toilets every day, and only allowing him 1 meal a day of rice mixed with cow dung. Just because he defied the Marquis, his father made him the family's most beloved heir. His brother's butler, Alan, saw the young master facing a prison sentence, and expressed an inexplicable sadness. Although his demeanor was very moving, Jack really felt it was too embarrassing. After being locked up here, he wondered how his father would bail out his most cherished son. According to their script, he speculated about the family disgrace. Jack, in his fight for the title, studied forbidden dark magic, and his brother discovered his descent into darkness, and tried to stop him. But to his surprise, Jack ignored him, and even attacked him with dark magic. Although the older brother was beaten and bleeding, he still generously forgave his younger brother. I bet only the Marquis and his wife could come up with such a disgusting script. What he needs now is time and power. And the place to solve these issues is the academy. He plans to gather followers at school, build influence, and buy more time to regain his past life strength. As long as he recovers his power, then I can protect teacher, sister, and Aaron. As he spoke, he sat up and snapped his fingers. His battle aura emerged. In this world, the levels of battle aura are divided into 10 ranks. Ranks 1 to 3 are known as beginners. Ranks 4 to 6 are known as experts. Ranks 7 to 9 are known as masters. And the 10th segment is referred to as extraordinary. Just now, he is locked in prison. He can avoid people's gaze. He is cultivating his fighting spirit. However, at this moment, the sound of footsteps came from outside. He hurriedly dispelled his external fighting spirit. And he burrowed into the blankets. At this moment, footsteps stopped outside his cell door. A gentle voice called, "Jack." Hearing the voice, Jack sat up abruptly. This was a voice he could only hear in dreams. The voice of his sister, Elizabeth, from deep in his memories. She touched his face tenderly through the shackles, heartbroken. "Are you all right, Jack?" His eyes were already brimming with tears. He called out sister as if in a dream. The sister before him was still so beautiful and kind. He felt fortunate to see his sister in reality rather than in a dream. He could no longer suppress his emotions. He unleashed his fighting spirit and shattered the shackles blocking his way. He embraced his sister. This time, he would definitely protect her. He wouldn't let her suffer even the slightest injustice. This young man began sword training at 3 and reached mastery. At 6, he studied magic to the level of Grand Mage. By 14, he had achieved mastery in both magic and martial arts. Mere imprisonment. Chains could never hold him. Nor could they stop his reunion with his sister. This time, he held his sister close in a deep embrace. He made up his mind. In this life, his sister's tragedy would never be repeated. But his sister was confused. She thought he had eaten something wrong. He held his sister. With tears in his eyes, he told her not to sacrifice herself for the family anymore. His sister gently patted his back. Just like when they were kids. "Silly brother, just wait. Your sister will find a way to get you out." The day after she left, a guard told him, "Third young master, you can go now." He was about to get his clothes and shoes, but the arrogant guard actually told him to leave barefoot. Just a mere soldier, daring to insult the third young master of the Marquis estate like this. "Since you look down on people, I'll teach you the rules with blood." Jack returned to his Rose Manor. Aaron was also happy the young master finally came back. When he noticed the bloodstains on the young master, he was very anxious. "What happened, young master?" Jack told him. "This blood isn't his. Please rest assured." But he noticed that many guards had been added to his estate. It seems his father increased the forces to keep an eye on him. He even sent a knight of the gap. Poor Jack. A knight who prides himself on honorable deeds, now assigned to watch over a family outcast. At this moment, he heard about Jack's situation in prison. He came before the third young master, not knowing what he might say. What Jack didn't expect was, he bowed respectfully, lowered his head, and said, "Young master, I just received a report that you broke the guard's limbs." He even took one of his eyes. Upon hearing this, Alan stated that his young master would never do something so cruel. The apprentice knight in front of him said, "That's such a major incident," gave him the right to ask the third young master why he did this. Upon hearing the knight say this, Jack covered his face, sighing and laughing at the same time. "You, a mere squire, dare to bring up the word qualification with me in this situation? What do I need to report to you about? Stand at attention, or kneel and bow 100 times. Which will you choose? Do you still want to become a full knight? If you want to, then complete your tasks properly. Otherwise, I'll break a guard every day. You should be begging me not to cause trouble now, not discussing qualifications with me." Hearing this, the knight lowered his head and apologized to the young master. Jack restrained his hostility. He laughed cheerfully, teasing him for being the Empire's loyal dog. He turned and walked away. He mentioned the prison situation to the knight, telling him to handle his own release. If he's dissatisfied, he can take it up with the Marquis. Also, calling you knight is too awkward. From now on, I'll just call you little chick. When this young master calls for you, little chick, you must immediately come running. Always be on standby. Do you understand? That's all. He and Alan went back inside, leaving a bewildered knight standing there. It seems he doesn't quite like that name. This father wants to turn his daughter into a tool to enhance the family's reputation. He actually used his younger brother as leverage. If he doesn't obediently follow instructions, Jack will be sent to the coal mines immediately. But as long as he complies, when his brother reaches adulthood, they'll announce his death to the public and let him leave the family to live an ordinary life. He agreed to this for his brother's safety. Otherwise, as long as he is a little disobedient, his anger will be fully unleashed on Jack. Elizabeth, who stepped out of her father's room, leaned weakly against the door, thinking that her brother now seems no longer timid. But what does that matter? We cannot escape the arrangement of fate. He made a silent resolution. No matter what, you must protect your brother well. However, at this moment, Jack knows nothing about these things. Having just been released from prison, he is indulging himself. He keeps praising Alan's cooking skills. It's really amazing. Seeing Alan hesitating to speak, Jack encourages him to just say whatever he wants. No need to hold back. Alan, don't turn your head. It means there's nothing wrong. The young master is about to start school. There's only 1 month left of the vacation. Jack has forgotten. There's still school to think about. He attends the Royal Academy. All noble children must go here for education. It's normal to study for 4 years. The mandatory school age is 14 years old. Jack is currently in the 1st grade. The first semester has already ended. It's summer vacation now. This makes him very happy to have a second chance at life. He feels delighted about being a student. His teacher from his previous life had a good relationship with the school. He can ignore others, but cannot disregard his teacher. Moreover, what he needs now is time. School is a good place to gain time and build influence. And the butler Alan asked the young master, wherever he goes, he mustn't cause any trouble. And Jack smiled. Don't worry, I definitely won't cause any trouble. There's still plenty of time before school starts. Stop overthinking it. Do you want to eat with me? There's so much food here. I can't finish it all. In a past life, he left home with the family's most powerful technology. Only his butler, Alan, accompanied him on the journey. The two of them ran desperately, only to escape the thousands of soldiers sent by their father. When the horses could no longer run, he looked back at the Marquis. The leader sent to hunt down his youngest son was none other than the Ironblood Knight Order leader, whom he called Chick. At that time, he was already a 9th level swordsman. Faced with such a desperate situation, his butler, Alan, chose without hesitation to cut the young master's throat. In this way, he sacrificed himself to buy time for the young master to escape. It was on this very day that he learned his butler, Alan, was actually a 9th level mage. In this lifetime, he invited Alan to sit down and dine with him, but Alan insisted on the distinction between master and servant, saying such behavior was unacceptable. Jack angrily told him it was an order. Sit down and eat right now. Aaron could only obey the young master's order and sat down. Jack asked him how his sister has been lately. Aaron told Jack that his sister Elizabeth was the same as usual. Jack gave a slight grin and twirled a bite of noodles. Tell Alan he's not an idiot. You know very well how difficult the situation is for your sister. Seeing Alan's stunned expression, he put the food from his fork into his mouth and complimented Alan's cooking. He told Alan that since he could remember until now, he has been able to eat without any worries. It's all because you check the food carefully every day to make sure there's no poison. Alan never expected his young master to know so much. However, Jack stated that he knows more than just that. You're a 9th level mage now, right? You used to stay by mother's side, so you must know her well. Everyone says sister resembles mother a lot, so mother must have been a good person. You have always been quietly protecting your mother, but who would have thought that the one guarding her is actually a 9th level mage? Then she must not be a commoner. Father doesn't even know her true identity. I can pretend not to know any of this, because he cares more about what kind of person Alan is sitting here at this moment. At this time, Alan lowered his head and said, "Young master, what exactly do you want me to do?" Jack told him that in this family, the people he trusts most are you and his sister. Please protect her for me. Alan mentioned that Miss Eliza reached level 6 in her training by age 18. Even without her, the young lady can protect herself. But Jack shook his head. He told him that his sister was kind by nature. She was easily willing to compromise for the family. These were things that the Marquis should have done. Yet, it was left to his sister to face them. My steward is a 9th level mage. My sister is a renowned swordsman at a young age. However, both of these strong individuals died in the last life while protecting others. Now, having been given a second chance at life, I'm instructing the butler, Alan, to take good care of my sister over the next 4 years while I'm away at school. Because unless something unusual happens, I won't be coming back. I sternly told him, for these 4 years, stay by my sister's side for me. After that, I will set you free. You can choose your own life. Hearing this, Alan seemed a bit lost and uncertain. Are you still mumbling about your own life? It looks like he has lost direction in life. I told him not to keep hiding behind me. It's time for him to find what he wants to do. Alan asked me why the deadline is 4 years. I lazily leaned on the sofa and told him that after 4 years, I can protect my sister myself. I was just about to remind Alan about a few key individuals. A knight outside called my name, saying he had something to report. You really have no sense of awareness. You interrupt me right when I'm about to get to the key point. I suppressed my anger and let him in to see what he wanted to report. Walking in was the knight I had called a little chick. He reported to me that the prison guards had finished their work and sent him to the hospital. I impatiently and with great authority urged him to continue. He was clearly intimidated by my presence. He told me the excuse he had prepared. The guard I injured was said by him to have been hurt accidentally while practicing swordsmanship. I couldn't help but laugh after hearing that. Not a bad story. Truly, a teachable young man. I praised him. I told him he was indeed father's good dog. I asked if he wanted me to reward him with a bone. He called me, young master. My name is James. Stop calling me chick. I ignored him. I told him I wanted to practice swordsmanship. Go get me a wooden sword and a real one, right away. He actually got a bit annoyed and told me he wasn't my errand boy, and even planned to refuse. I smirked at him. Do you really hate me, little chick? I can give you a chance to teach me a lesson. At that moment, Alan anxiously shouted, young master. Don't be impulsive. Meanwhile, Knight James was still doubting whether what I said was true or not. I showed him my hand. So delicate and smooth. I have never touched a sword at all. When you and I practice together, you can hit me as much as you want. At this moment, Knight James asked me if I wanted to recognize him as my swordsmanship teacher. Hearing him say that, I let out a laugh. Oh man, I heard another joke today. Enough nonsense. Get lost and go get the sword. This young man was known as the sword demon in his past life. He single-handedly destroyed a nation. And now, an intern knight actually wants to be his swordsmanship teacher. He might not know that the young man in front of him, standing on the corpses he slaughtered, can stand shoulder to shoulder with the heavens. Just now, I laughed heartily. Tell the knight to quickly go get the sword. But the butler, Alan, asked me, young master, are you okay? That man just now is at the level of rank 4. While chewing on my steak, I told him, so what if he is rank 4? Alan, do you not have faith in me? He expressed some concern, saying he was afraid I might get hurt. Aren't you just afraid I'll lose? How about a bet with me? Let's bet on whether I can win. Alan carefully considered it. He said to me, young master, I don't think we should bet on winning or losing. Instead, we should bet on how many times you will be hit. Hearing this, I laughed again. You're Aaron. This bet is interesting. Hurry and tell me what we're wagering. Aaron seriously told me, young master, are you really going to spar with him? You two aren't even on the same level. Hearing this, I looked at Aaron with a playful gaze and said, if, during this sparring match with that rookie, he manages to land a single hit on me, what if I win? The loser has to fulfill a wish for the winner. Alan didn't say a word. It was as if he was quietly listening to me show off. Young master, what do you want me to do? Just give me a direct order. I'm just a servant. Hearing Alan say this, I just want to tease him a bit more. This Alan is really amusing. I pointed my fork at him and said, I've told you before. In this Marquis's residence, I only trust my sister. And you, my steward Alan. Hearing this, Alan felt very happy to be acknowledged. But you told me that pointing at someone with a fork is very rude behavior. And at that moment, I smiled wickedly, and seriously told Alan that I only sincerely ask those I trust, and not fate. So, Alan, I'm counting on you, sister. At this moment, Alan's eyes were filled with a glow of emotion. He looked at the young master, astonished that someone so young could speak straight to his heart. Looking at my smiling face, he sighed and said, since the young master has spoken this way, I can only agree with you. At this moment, a knock came at the door. The chicken knight had arrived. He knelt in front of me and called me young master. He said his earlier behavior was out of line. He apologized for his previous words. He offered to be my sparring partner. He was more than willing to assist. I looked at the young man kneeling on the ground. I understood that, though most people ignored me to my face like that prison guard, they were actually insulting me. But if he acts directly, he's still worried about the consequences. I reached out and suggested, how about we go somewhere private? Seeing the confusion in his eyes, I poked him on the forehead, asking, Are you afraid of losing to me? At this, he felt humiliated and glared at me in anger. Yes, that's exactly the look I wanted. He helplessly looked at me without saying a word. I asked him, do you think you're bound to win? He didn't respond, but from his expression, I could tell it didn't matter. It's normal for him to think that way. So be it, Aaron. You find a place where no one is around. Don't let the chick embarrass itself in public. Alan quickly took us to a desolate basement. I didn't expect there to be such an open space in the mansion. I eagerly suggested to the chick that we start with the wooden sword. The chick handed me the sword with some disdain. I gripped the sword tightly. I prepared my fighting stance. The chick praised me, saying, "Young Master San, you wield your sword quite skillfully." Hearing this, I couldn't help but smile. I thought to myself, skillful? Ha! In my past life, I had killed people, and they piled up like a certain race. I stood on top of them, able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the heavens. I charged forward with my sword, and shouted at him, "Chick, even if it's a wooden sword, you have to give it your all. Watch my attack." The little chick calmly defends against my onslaught. With a crack, my sword was deflected. The little chick sees me get hit in the leg, thinking to itself, sure enough, he's a newbie. To actually face a level 4 swordsmanship expert this way, to avoid any trouble if third young master loses, I'd better intimidate him a bit. Just as he reacted, my sword was already at his throat. The fight was over. You lost, chicken. Chicken stared in disbelief at the scene before him. Butler Allen looked at me in disbelief. I seriously told the little chick that if this is a real sword, you would already be a corpse. Didn't I say to give it your all? The little chick was very confused. How did the third young master move here? Is it really the first time he picked up a sword? The third young master's sword is so fast. This abandoned third young master, who has never rested from swordsmanship, actually defeated the powerful 4-rank swordsmanship master in 3 moves. Just now, I held my sword to the neck of Night Chick, and told him that if this were a real sword, you would be dead. In Butler Allen's eyes, he originally thought the young master would be defeated in a single move by the knight before him. The training would end quickly. However, unexpectedly, the young master before him remained so calm and composed. His moves were not only skillful, but his attacks were also very sharp. Allen realized that if the young master held a real sword in his hand, that apprentice knight is undoubtedly going to die. He doesn't understand. He has never rested from practicing swordsmanship. The young master who hasn't even touched a sword. Why is he so strong now? Is this what they call a genius? Even a genius can't reach this level, right? And I jokingly told James about the chick. You are 25 years old this year, right? When did you start practicing? The little fighter hesitantly told me. He is 23 this year. He started practicing at 18. I couldn't help but praise him. You reached the 4th level in just 5 years, although you started late. But this speed is pretty good too. So I decided to thoroughly explore his potential. The little guy's potential isn't bad. With proper training, he could reach the 7th level, or even the 8th level. How ridiculous. Such talent, yet ordered by superiors to stand guard. A child. I threw away the wooden sword, and picked up a real sword. Smiling, I told Little Chicken, I'm somewhat satisfied with you now. Let's duel with real swords this time. But Little Chicken, still worried, said, Young Master, you could get hurt using a real sword. Hearing him say that, I'm speechless. Ah, you've got to be kidding me. Little guy, haven't you figured out the situation yet? Let me give you some advice. Confidence is good. Arrogance, not so much. You think that I just beat you, out of luck or coincidence, don't you? That's why I call you Chick. I'll let you make the first move this time. If you can withstand 3 moves from me, then you win. The Chick now faces my taunt, once again losing his temper. He charges at me with his wooden sword, and I step forward to meet him, surprised at how easily he gets provoked. No wonder he's still an apprentice knight. In an instant, our swords clashed, and with just a light strike, I knocked the Chick's sword to the ground. Once again, my sword was at his neck. Striking a victorious pose, I told him, Chick, you've died twice today already. Amazed, he asked me how I managed to do it. I withdrew my sword from his neck and told him, even if I explained, you wouldn't understand. This is advanced technique. So, Chick, do you admit defeat? If you're not convinced, let's have another match. He clearly wasn't satisfied and angrily ran off to grab a real sword. At that moment, I made a face at Alan. I bet, but I won. The butler Alan sighed and said to me, I know. I asked him, I'm counting on you for my sister. Can you do it? Alan bowed deeply to me and vowed on his life that he would pay any price for it. At that moment, the little chicken also picked up a real sword and said to me that this time he absolutely wouldn't be the same as before. At this moment, I raised my sword and grinned, saying to Xiao Ji, interesting, interesting. Xiao Ji expressed that he had no problem with it. Xiao Ji replied, I will also use my fighting spirit to battle you. Young master, bring it on. Go ahead and use your fighting spirit. At this moment, I raised my sword, gathered my energy, and struck at him. Xiao Ji blocked my attack with his blade once again. He didn't understand why, though he managed to take the hit, he couldn't counter the third young master's offensive. All he felt was sharpness. He couldn't hold on any longer after a while, his sword slipped from his hand and he staggered backward. I was standing on him and said, little chick, I haven't even put in any effort, and you've already fallen. Is it over so soon? Little chick incredulously asked me, third young master. Have you really never practiced swordsmanship? Why do you have such incredible power? Indeed, having defeated little chick right before me would completely overturn his worldview. It's actually quite simple. Usually, people distribute their fighting spirit evenly throughout their body to enhance their strength. But I am different. I only concentrate my fighting spirit in one area. I raised my sword and asked him, do you really want to become a formal knight? He didn't understand why the young master asked him this. Aside from becoming a formal knight, what else could he do? I slowly told him what he could do. You can be a hound that only follows my orders. I promise this will be far more exciting than being a full-fledged knight. Follow me. The most useless third young master of the Xiaojia clan mastered the infinite sword technique. Even the powerful swordmaster couldn't withstand the third young master's assault. And after I struck him down, I asked him if he'd be willing to be my loyal dog. He asked me in horror, if I become your dog, what's in it for me? Hearing him say that, I couldn't help but sigh. I told him he didn't even ask what he'd have to do, just what he'd get out of it. But it's okay. It doesn't matter. When my loyal dog can give you strength and power, anything you desire, I can provide for you. Listen to me when I say this. The little chick asked me what exactly he needed to do. I stared at the little chick seriously, and told him to clear away all those who hinder me, and to protect my safety. My words left Chick and Aaron stunned. Chick lay on the ground, confused, and asked me, young master, who do you want me to kill? I lifted the foot pressing down on him, and told him to go kill my brother. I'm only giving you 24 hours. Chick, I hope you make the right choice. With the couplet ended, Butler Allen helped me stretch my muscles. He asked me, young master, do you really believe that apprentice knight? If the Marchioness finds out, things could get complicated. Hearing Alan say this made me unable to help but laugh. I don't believe him, Alan. This grudge is targeted at the Marquise. That woman is hardly a real threat. Although she does want to get rid of me, she won't make a move against me just yet. Her precious son is still terrified of water. Besides, the Marquis wants to use me as leverage to control my sister. Even if she wanted to harm me, do you think the Marquis would allow it? That said, I let out a cold laugh. Besides, who in this world could kill me? Not even the Fairy Lord, the Dragon Lord, or the Orc King. These formidable beings are all powerless against me. Thinking about how the Marchioness intends to harm me, it's quite amusing. What can a mere shrew do to me? Let Alan finish with me first. I stood up and confidently told him, Alan, unless I want to die myself, no one can kill me. Alan asked me what I really wanted to do. I looked at Alan and said if he wanted to know, then he should secretly follow me tomorrow. Alan asked me in confusion if I wasn't planning to take him with me. I firmly told him that he couldn't come alone, and I instructed Alan to follow me secretly. Alan nodded at me to show he understood. He indicated that he knew. At this moment, the little chick was angrily running towards the Duke's mansion. He thought to himself that although the young master was a genius, it was too ridiculous to expect him to act like a dog. He doesn't have the powerful family support like the second young master. Not a single family retainer stands by him. Xiaoji thought about how he was humiliated by the third young master today. He bitterly resented being so frightened by a mere child. He couldn't help but laugh darkly. If he were to tell the Marchioness about this, it would surely be a huge merit. This despicable Marchioness even gave her sister expired 1982 Lafite to drink, and he wouldn't even let me refuse. He even wanted to use me as a tool to gain power. After the marriage, he even smiled and told me that his brother Jack wanted to take a squire for himself. Still too young. He'd never dreamed that this knight is actually loyal to his brother. Does he really think a mere knight could bring me down? What a joke. She didn't argue after hearing that. She could only go along, smiling, and said Jack was truly naive, because if she sided with Jack, the family's pressure on her younger brother would only worsen. The Marquise praised her for being sensible, and promised to find her a marriage partner as soon as possible. Then she stepped behind her, darkly warning her, if you have a man you like, or dare do something like that, I will make sure you die a horrible death. Meanwhile, I'm training in battle energy, and in just 5 hours, I advanced a level. Now, I've reached the strength of a level 2 swordsman. This left the butler, Alan, in disbelief. After all, it took him 2 months to go from level 1 to level 2. Yet his young master managed it in just 5 hours. I lay on the bed and asked Alan what time it was. Alan took out his 24K gold pocket watch and looked at it. He informed me, young master, it is now 5:48 p.m. I hurriedly stood up, not realizing it was already time for dinner. Alan quickly asked if I wanted the usual steak. I shook my head to indicate no need. I need to go to the Marquis' residence. The people at the Marquis estate should be having dinner by now. Alan, don't try to stop me. I'm just going to say goodbye. After all, I'll be away from home for a while. At this moment, everyone at the Marquis table is eating. The dining room is completely silent. And just then, I kicked the door open with a bang. And shouting, let's eat. Why so gloomy? Is the kingdom falling? This shocked my sister. And my father was furious at my rudeness. I casually told them, I'm the honorable third young master of a Marquis' household. Surely there's a place for me here, right? A family should sit down and eat together in harmony. I sat down. I picked up a chicken leg and stuffed it in my mouth, chewing it greedily. Not bad, not bad. It tastes great. It would be even better if it were New Orleans style, but it's pretty close compared to what Alan makes. My behavior made my second brother and the Duchess quite displeased. I ignored their cannibalistic stares. I patted my belly to show I was full. Just as I was licking the chicken grease off my fingers, Father called out to me, Jack, you came here because you have something to say, right? Hearing my father's words, I sneered, and I teasingly told him to tell the truth. I do have something to say. Otherwise, why would I come to such a lifeless place? Wouldn't you agree? Father, this so-called good-for-nothing third young master, grasped the essence of the sword within 5 minutes, just because he learned that his sister, whom he cherished like life itself, was once again threatened and humiliated. So, he kicked open the Marquis' mansion door, and boldly sat at the dining table. I tore off a drumstick and took a big bite, ignoring the cold stares from everyone at the table. My father saw the scene, and angrily asked if I had something to say. I looked at him with a cold gaze and told him he guessed right. Otherwise, why would I come to a place like this? My father reprimanded me, asking how I dared to be so rude. I shot back, asking why he made it so serious. When a family eats together, they should be happy. Everyone should smile. My sister saw us getting tense, and quickly tried to pull me aside to talk, but I raised my hand to stop her, and told her, Sister, calm down for a moment. Then, I looked at my Marquis. Father scoffed, saying I'd be going to school tomorrow. If anyone dares to bully my sister again, I'll have to twist their head right off. I said, grinning. I told Father I wasn't joking. The Marquise looked furious upon hearing it. She couldn't understand how I dared speak like that. Father told me it was fine. No one will bully my sister. I'm surprised. He agreed to my request. But besides that, I still have a score to settle. Since someone bullied my sister, then my brother will let you feel my wrath. I heard that after I beat you up, I've always been afraid of water. I don't dare drink anything. Is that true? Then you must really like this bottle of 82 La Fight. Saying this, I poured an entire bottle of red wine onto the table. My brother looked on in horror. It was as if he was back in that moment of fear when I was in control. At that moment, the Marchioness couldn't hold back anymore. He angrily scolded me for lacking upbringing. How dare I be so arrogant? Coming here to act wild. And I ignored him. I turned around and asked everyone present where the barking was coming from. Seeing this scene, my sister was anxious. She couldn't understand how her usually weak brother could become so strong. But my actions and the insulting words made the Marchioness tremble. She gritted her teeth and said fiercely that she would never let me go. After hearing his words, I stopped in my tracks, stunned for 2 seconds. Then I turned back and told him, You? Let's see how you won't let me go. After I left, the furious Marchioness cursed me. Even the maids in the house were saying, No one expected the sweet-looking third young master could make her this angry. I just got a scolding from my sister who chased after me. The whole night passed without any surprises. Soon, it was the next day. I headed to school. Even I didn't expect it. That I, the third young master of a marquis household, would have so few people seeing me off. At least the carriage is nice. He is escorting me. This knight looks both unlucky and defiant. He has the strength of 6 segments. The way he looks at me is also evasive. It's very unusual. I know he was instructed by the Marchioness. He plans to make a move on me halfway. I don't know what choice the little chick traveling with me has made. My sister, standing by, said she was very worried about me going alone. She feared the Marchioness might be plotting something against me, and intended to personally escort me to school. But I smiled, and told her not to go to such trouble. Many things will change in the future. And besides, sister, please believe me, Alan, you should go back too. Don't forget what I entrusted to you that day. You can rest assured, he definitely can't kill me. After my sister and Alan left, I fell asleep in the carriage. However, the tallest knight in the group was standing. He was actually watching me sleep, with a murderous intent in his eyes, like a saint. The one looked down upon the most in the Marquis family, had surprisingly mastered the swift wind sword technique. Just because, on the way to school, those acting under the Marchioness orders intended to harm me. Not only did they want to break my limbs, they even planned to destroy all the combat energy I cultivated. Even the Gap Knight, little G, whom I had my eye on, has now made his choice. He stands on the opposite side of me. But what does it matter? I look at the arrogant crowd before me. I didn't expect the Countess to be so ruthless. The 6-star knight who turned back drew his sword, and said to me that although you have a talent for swordsmanship, but unfortunately, your meager battle energy is insignificant before me. And in this remote, deserted forest, they don't know that it feels as if I've returned home. Though I've lived peacefully here in this new life for a few days, the scars of the past have long since left their mark on my soul. I called out, Arlen, are you nearby? But the silence around me was so deep I could hear the wind brushing through the flowers and grass. The 6-star knight laughed, saying no one could save me now. I ignored him. Calmly, I said I am Jian. I once hid away in the mountains for 10 years. There, I met my teacher. I learned many things. After my teacher passed away, I left the mountain. But nothing was the same anymore. The whole world has changed. When everyone heard this, they thought I was scared out of my wits. What is this third young master rambling about? In the next moment, I drew my sword, and with a fierce look in my eyes, I told him, there is something that has been weighing on my mind. That is my sister's ordeal. She is clever and smart, brilliantly talented. But her kindness led to a tragic end. When I drew my sword, the powerful aura stunned everyone. My voice seemed to resonate across the entire world. Didn't you say my so-called talent and swordsmanship were worthless? Well, let me show you now what the way of the sword truly is. I leapt into the air, unleashing a swift wind slash at them. The ones who mocked me just now suddenly turned serious. They realized that if they didn't eliminate me immediately, they would be the ones to die. As I raised my sword in the air to unleash a strike upon them, there was no emotion in my eyes. They were the first sacrifices on my path of vengeance. Go and join my sister of a past life in the afterlife. I swung my sword down upon them. Actually, up until the last second, little chick didn't regret his choice. After all, choosing the second young master, who had backing, seemed much better than the third young master, who had nothing. He thought he was making the right decision, but what he didn't expect was the third young master standing before him like the god of death, ready to take his life. This third young master, long considered a simpleton, had mastered the infinite sword and defeated 30 swordmasters in a single strike. Even the emperor's sword, forged by his own sister, couldn't withstand the immense power and broke. The entire scene was like a field of carnage. At that moment, there was not a trace of emotion on my face. I said calmly, Alan, come out, I know you're there. Alan walked out of the woods with a face full of terror. What had just happened was beyond his comprehension. He asked me, young master, how did you do it? I had no intention of hiding anything from Alan. I told him this was something I accomplished in the Infinite Sword Prison. There are a total of 8 moves. What I just used was only the first move. I haven't explained it clearly to Alan yet. I coughed up blood from all the pain. This body still can't withstand such immense power. Alan nervously asked if I was okay. I gasped and told him I was fine. Quick, give me your potion. Alan quickly took it out of his pocket and helped me drink it. Only then did I start to feel better. Alan asked why I was so unresponsive. Without this potion, young master, you really would have died. I looked at Alan, who showed genuine concern. I told him that I knew he had always carried the potion for me, because in my previous life, when I was fleeing from my father's pursuit, I was on the brink of death. It was Alan who saved me. He drank the potion for me. At that time, I was only focused on escaping, and didn't even thank Alan. Speaking of this, my eyes were filled with affection and gratitude. Thank you, Alan. Alan also knows through my confessions that I was reborn. I stood up and took off my clothes. I told Sir Alan, the little chick is dead. I placed my foot on its head. Originally, I planned to nurture it well, and have it work for me. Unfortunately, he didn't make the right choice. I turned to look at Aaron, calm and silent. I was puzzled as to why Aaron wasn't surprised at all. After hearing about my rebirth, I asked him if he wasn't curious. Then I leaned in close and asked if he wanted to know what happens in the future. Seeing my mischievous grin, Aaron simply replied that he wasn't interested, because he feels that he wouldn't die an untimely death no matter where he goes. But when he learned about his fate from me, he instantly became somewhat disheartened. After saying this, I got on the carriage to rest for a while, because the previous battle had drained too much of my energy. At this moment, Alan looked at the hell I had created. He couldn't believe that the usually gentle and easily bullied third young master had defeated 30 people with a single strike. To be precise, he had only used one sword. Then he was surprised to discover that everyone's wounds had pierced through their chests, but they weren't sword wounds. How did the young master manage to do this? He looked over at me, already deep in sleep, unable to stop thinking about the young master, wondering what you went through in your past life, and what kind of life you had lived. The Marquis' third son, once called a worthless failure, actually fought his way from Baichao Garden to his 3 uncles. Even the Emperor's sword, forged for him by his sister with refined steel, got dulled. Exhausted, I had just rested for 2 hours, when Arlen loudly woke me up. I was in a terrible mood. I asked Arlen what was going on. Turns out he was worried about my health. Although I took the medicine, Alan still wasn't at ease. I told Alan not to worry. Right now, apart from the pain, there's nothing else seriously wrong. After hearing this, Alan stopped asking. Then he took out a bag for me to see. Inside were the knight's belongings. A total of 5 bottles of fine potions and dozens of gold coins. I sighed, realizing that it truly was the Marquis' treasury. There were so many good items. Alan asked me, "Aren't you going to drink a potion?" I told him it wouldn't help to drink one now. Seeing Alan looking downcast, I took out 3 bottles of potions and returned them to him. Alan didn't expect that he would exchange 1 vial of potion for 3. He asked me what my next plan was. The young master will take care of those escorting you. The Marquis will definitely suspect you. I heard Alan say this. I couldn't help but laugh. If he suspects me, what can he do about it? Alan believed that the Marquis would definitely summon you back. Then I asked Aaron if he wanted to make another bet with me. Aaron immediately turned his head, saying he didn't want to bet. He felt he would lose again. It's funny, Aaron actually learned his lesson and didn't fall for it. After saying that, Aaron knelt on one knee in front of me. Young master, I trust you have your own plans. I asked him if anyone saw him coming here. Aaron assured me not to worry. He left a clone at the other mansion to clean before coming here. The clone technique is a level 9 advanced magic. In the entire world, no more than 10 people can see through Alan's clone, and they are all deep in the Beast Forest on a mission. I warned Alan. The Marquis may torture you severely because of today's incident. If the atmosphere turns bad, just blame everything on me. If the Marquis wants to kill you, you should tell him this from me. Alan asked me what that was. I looked at him with a murderous gaze. Tell him that if he ever kills you or your sister, that day will be the day of the Marquis family's downfall. Alan stood up in fear after hearing this. I told Alan not to be nervous. These are just assumptions. I only hope the Marquis understands his limits. To play the role of a father well in front of my sister. This is the one chance I give him in this life. Before Arlen left, he asked if I really had to go to the academy. Seeing the look on his face, I knew he wanted to leave here with me. Though that would be quite interesting. But it's not the right time yet. I patted Alan. I reminded him to take good care of my sister. After Alan left, I packed my things. I got on my horse and prepared to leave. Although I was reluctant to part with my sister and Alan, I had things I needed to do. That is to find my teacher Milos. He taught me how to survive in my past life. He also gave me the power to take revenge. He helped me transform from a useless person into someone. My teacher's dark magic once made the entire world tremble. The thought of seeing him again makes my heart feel excited after such a long time. This third young master of the Marquis, treated as an idiot by others. I can't believe I wielded the young master's sword and slayed a giant dragon. After I said goodbye to Alan, I arrived at a village. Seeing the children laughing and playing here, I felt that this village must be a great place to live. I walked into an inn to take a rest. It was very noisy inside, and there were people drinking and having fun. Speaking confidently, the golden retriever in the shop seemed really happy to see me. It even wagged its tail excitedly at me. I found a corner and sat down, hoping no one would bother me here. After I sat down, a voice called out to me, saying it was the first time they'd seen a young customer come alone. Looking back, I couldn't tell if it was the owner or a staff member here, who asked me if I was dining or staying. I noticed the scars on his face and his build, which clearly belonged to someone else. He didn't look like someone who runs an inn at all. He looked more like a mercenary. Then I took out 2 gold coins, and asked him for some simple food and drink. Open another room. I didn't expect him to smile and say that 1 gold coin was enough. For food, I was served apple pie and Wellington steak. He even mocked me for being a kid and didn't give me beer. He just gave me milk to help me grow. I touched the store's golden retriever and thought this person is nice. He saw that I was a newcomer. They actually don't rip people off. Could it be that life here is too easy? That's true, there hasn't been a war yet. Watching the golden retriever cutely acting cute with me, wagging its tail. I smile and tell him, you have no idea what terrifying things may happen in the future, do you? Yet you're still excitedly wagging your tail. Just then, I overheard the people at the next table talking about the royal family gathering strong warriors to hunt magical beasts. A large number of Dochi masters are participating in the battle. Even the most powerful Ironblood knights from the Marquis estate are involved. I have no idea why Teslan would go to such lengths for this pointless effort. In my past life, I knew about this battle. The magical beast forest is in the Greenland Grand Canyon, a neutral zone in the world. Here live half-orcs, goblins, fairies, and elves. There's even a giant serpent. The blood of these magical creatures can be used to make potions. Ogre sinew can be used to craft bows. Some unique creatures can be used to forge weapons and armor. Fairy feathers are prized accessories among noble women. Elves, with their enchanting beauty, are often kept as pets. Their campaign this time into the intimidating forest of monsters was driven by human greed. Unfortunately, the outcome of this expedition was failure, and it was a disastrous one. The Ironblood Knights lost 1/3 of their forces. Other noble-led teams suffered the same losses. Because of this failure, the king lost his rising star. He also lost the support of the nobles. The kingdom began to fall apart at that time. And a year later, civil war broke out. Just as I was listening to a few people talk, they unexpectedly mentioned the third young master of the Marquis' residence. I immediately perked up my ears. I listened more attentively. They said that this third young master of the Marquis' residence actually used dark magic, and this fool was even thrown into prison. A few people laughed heartily, even saying that this idiot, the third young master of the Marquis' house, has no talent. How could he possibly learn dark magic? He must have learned some tricks from shady characters at the brothel. At that moment, the woman from earlier brought me food and drink. She asked me what was so interesting. That made me laugh like this. I couldn't help but find it amusing when I heard that. Ha ha ha, I unconsciously laughed along. If it weren't for this kind woman sitting in front of me, I might have sacrificed them all to the heavens. After all, it's a capital offense for commoners to talk about nobles. I told her there was nothing to be happy about. I only overheard them saying that the third young master of the Marquis household is a fool. I thought it was amusing, so I listened in for a bit. But this woman told me, most people judge things they haven't seen themselves, based on rumors. But he's different. He makes judgments only after seeing for himself. I watched him finish speaking and smile without saying a word. He picked up a piece of steak and put it in his mouth. Although it wasn't as delicious as Alan's, it tasted pretty good. However, just then, this woman unexpectedly smiled and said to me that the third young master of the Marquis' residence is quite handsome. The rumor that he is an idiot must be false. This third young master of the Marquis' residence, mockingly called a big fool by the world. He actually went all in with a 2 and a 5 in his hand. Not long ago, I was looking at the woman who recognized me, the scar on her face, the muscles on her body, and the other regular mercenaries around her. I asked if she was the head of the local adventurers guild branch. She was startled when she heard that. Then he started laughing. I'm not just making random guesses. Every village has mercenaries roaming the streets to make a living. Some are hired to participate in territorial wars, while others take on simple jobs like finding lost pets. Or they become monster hunters. The Adventurers Guild introduces jobs to mercenaries, catering to their needs. Guilds are often set up near places like inns and lodgings. I asked him if he had so much free time that he could personally run a tavern. He just sighed when he heard that. The Adventurers Guild is right next door. But since this territory isn't large, there haven't been many job opportunities lately. So he's just scraping by like this. Looking at him laughing and chatting casually, I couldn't help but sigh. Even if I am the infamous fool of the Marquis's household, I am at most just a topic of conversation for the mercenaries at their drinking table. Yet somehow, I was recognized by a member of the guild in this remote mountain village. Does he know about what happened back then? Just a few dozen minutes after I arrived here, the village guard stopped me. He asked me why I was here. I took out the Marquis's token. The guard's attitude instantly became respectful. Even as I walked in, they still bowed to me at a 90-degree angle. Afraid I might be upset by their earlier neglect. I sensed he'd heard it from the gate guard. But even if it was important information, contacting the guard secretly without the Lord's consent was very risky. He laughed and asked me if I was worried about him. Sort of. After all, the woman in front of me was fairly kind to me, even though she'd heard rumors about me. Her attitude wasn't as bad as my second brother's or those knights. She smiled and reached out to introduce herself. Her name was Avinoa. She was the head of the Avinoa village branch of the Alavi's Guild. I politely shook her friendly hand. I said hello. However, I noticed that both the village name and his name are Awanoya. I immediately understood something, so I asked him if he was the first or the second in command here. He smiled and told me that he was the third here. The lord of this place is his elder brother. I praised him for being really impressive. Usually, only commoners become mercenaries. I never thought a noble would take up this kind of work. And most nobles your age would already be married by now, wouldn't they? He told me he does it because he loves the job, and his family didn't want to sell him off. Hearing this, I fell into deep thought. It's the complete opposite of my family's approach. It really makes one envious. What an interesting family. He held the golden retriever in his arms. He asked me why I came alone. Where are your guards? I took a bite of steak. I calmly told him, you fool. You're not worthy of having guards. Listen to me. He was instantly stunned. The third young master of this Marquis residence is indeed different from the rumors. I asked Avinoa to help me find a few bodyguards. Traveling alone is indeed quite strenuous. He asked me how many people I needed, how much I would pay. I raised my hand and told him a maximum of 5. It's best to have camping experience. It would be even better if you can cook. As for how much I'll pay, I will prepay 2 gold coins per person. After we arrive, I will pay 3 more gold coins. Avinoa's eyes lit up upon hearing this. The third young master is really generous. After all, they protect the merchants. Each person can take up to 30 silver coins. I took out 3 gold coins and handed them to Avinoa, telling him to prepare what we needed. A carriage and horses. If available, go ahead and buy them. Avinoa took the coins, smiling as he remarked on my generosity, and then handed me the room key. Let me have a good rest. I'll leave everything else to him. This section chief is such an interesting woman. She must be very reliable in her work, and those flies should have a hard time getting into this village. I entered the room, and lay down on the bed. In an instant, exhaustion washed over me, and I fell asleep in this room. I'm such a complete idiot. The golden retriever woke me up by licking me. It's the alarm I set for myself. I even had a dream yesterday. In the dream, I was still that useless person from a past life. It was my first encounter with my teacher. He laughed at my weakness, and told me kindness isn't a sin. Incompetence is. Jack, do you want to change yourself? At this moment, Aviner did not knock on the door. He came in directly and told me he had prepared everything I needed for the journey. When I walked out with my luggage, he informed me that everything had been arranged for me. Moreover, he had arranged a high-end carriage for me, and selected a few experienced escorts. I looked at the few people in front of me who asked me to guide them. Aren't they the same ones who spoke against me yesterday? At this moment, a middle-aged man came up to me, extended his hand, and said, He was John Doe, the leader of the Firefield mercenaries escorting me to Rock Mountain. I found the name unbelievable, because it means an unidentified corpse. Yet he actually used that name. Although I knew this was a fake name, I still politely shook his hand and told him his name was really interesting. He told me that the journey from here to Rock Mountain isn't too tight. Apart from a few small villages where we can rest, there aren't any places to stay, so we'll need to camp twice. 2 of them used to be chefs. And they also have plenty of camping experience. I listened to him talk for so long I was almost falling asleep. I asked him what all this meant. Does that mean I don't have to do anything? He smiled broadly and said to me, then let's set off right away. I have lifted all the boxes. Before leaving, I turned back to Avanoya. I thanked him for introducing me to such an interesting group of mercenaries. Avanoya told me not to mention it. These people are really experienced. But I know that this captain is not an ordinary mercenary. Although my physical condition is not as good as in my previous life, my eyesight and intuition are still intact. Aaron is a 9-star mage. It's because he concealed his identity and strength. So we can't use that as an example. However, the current leader of this mercenary group is 8-star. Could he also be hiding his strength? I smiled and said goodbye to Avanoya, and mentioned that we would meet again soon. He hopes we can have a beer together then. I playfully told him that if he's buying, I might consider it. Soon, I set off for Shuryen Mountain with the mercenaries. The weather is nice today. After a night's rest, I'm feeling much better than before. I suddenly noticed the mercenary captain watching me. I don't know what he means by that. I stand up abruptly and ask another mercenary nearby. You must have heard of me, right? He says he hasn't. Just knows I'm a young nobleman of high status. I smile and ask him, is that true? He tells me it is. The division chief said you should be traveling the world. I expressed my curiosity about something I had heard. I rummaged through my bosom. Then I threw him an article. He held it in his hands and examined it closely. Isn't this an article from the nobility? I asked him with a smile if he recognized this article. This is from my deceased family, the Balanchian Marquis family. And I am the useless young master you spoke of yesterday. The 3rd young master of the Marquis's mansion, known as the Good-for-Nothing, actually managed to eat 10 bowls of rice while camping in the wild. Just before the meal, he pointed at the chef and asked why he was called an idiot. He was also imprisoned for using dark magic. Looking at the few people trembling before me, I found it quite amusing. After all, it's all been made so clear. Now they also know my identity. Moreover, rumors about my use of dark magic are spreading wildly outside. This person trembled and said sorry to me. I told him that he wasn't wrong. After all, my teacher is a highly skilled dark magician. So as his student, even though I am a swordsman, it is impossible for me not to understand dark magic. I asked him why I didn't use my fists. Why do you insist on using dark magic? I pointed at the person next to him and asked, what about you? Why didn't you stop him when he insulted me yesterday? Yet when he insulted the king, you covered your mouth so tightly. This really makes me very sad. The person quickly apologized. He said he had no insight. Everyone present, except John, looked flustered. I think the department head may have only told him about my identity. I patted the man's shoulder. I told him it was okay. Forget about what happened yesterday. After all, we've been through a lot together for several days. I firmly grasped his shoulder. He was astonished that a child's strength could be so great. He hurriedly said that what the young master said was right. I hope to be in your care in the future. When it was time for dinner that evening, one of them said to me that he now understands. The rumors are indeed unreliable. I asked him what he meant by that, feeling puzzled. He told me that I am not like ordinary nobles. They are usually spoiled and pampered. They never do any work. And you actually washed the dishes yourself. It's really hard to believe. The others also agreed with this person's words. I didn't expect that this small act of mine would make these people see me in a new light. I just thought the lavish dishes they made looked so delicious, like the beef pies and pudding sausages. I wanted to hire him as my personal chef. I only felt satisfied inside deeply after my belly was full. Although thinking this way feels a bit unfair to Alan, I told everyone that I washed the dishes to thank them for making such a delicious dinner. After all, I consider myself a foodie. After explaining, I asked him who was on duty tonight. He told me they would draw lots to decide. They asked me if I wanted to join in. I pouted my lips. I said I was just a kid. I need to go to bed early to grow taller. It was too boring at night. I chatted with the mercenaries. I asked them if they knew how many dragons there are in the world. Everyone was quite confused. It is said that hundreds of years ago, all the divine dragons were wiped out by the legendary founding king. This great founding king, along with his 2 aides, destroyed all the divine dragons that once ruled the western continent. He then established the Teslan Empire, which over time became the kingdom of Teslan we know today, and eventually even a vassal state of the Turkan Empire. All of this is common knowledge. I started counting on my fingers. First of all, there are 2 dragon lords in the Black Sea. The royal family of the Turkan Empire has a small dragon. There are 5 in the Warcraft forest. As far as I know, there are 8 more that wander around in human form. So there are at least 16 divine dragons on this continent. Everyone was quite surprised by what I said. I knew they wouldn't believe my words, because divine dragons only appear in legends. So far, no one has seen them with their own eyes. I asked everyone if they found this story interesting. The reason the divine dragon cannot intervene in human affairs is because there is a covenant that restricts their actions. John Doe asked if I meant that the founding king really did not kill the divine dragon. I smiled a little. I told him that the despicable guy did not eliminate the gods and demons, but instead negotiated. Strictly speaking, it was those 2 unknown assistants who did it. I told everyone that the mainland we know is not the whole world. In simple terms, we are on the western continent, while the eastern continent is on the other side of the Black Sea. Let's not mention the little dragon. The Dragon Lord carries the mission passed down through generations, which is to protect the Black Sea. Although I don't know the origin of the barrier, I heard it was created thousands of years ago to separate the 2 continents. The Dragon Lords have taken it upon themselves to guard the barrier for generations. Likewise, I am also curious about what events on the eastern continent are blocked by the Dragon Lords. After hearing what I said, everyone burst into laughter. A mercenary stopped me and said, "Boss, you really know how to tell a story. It seems you really need someone to chat with." I sighed. I thought, forget it. Although I didn't expect them to believe me, I still felt a bit disappointed. This Marquis's 3rd son, who everyone considers useless, actually understood the essence of the sword in 3 minutes. He even fought against 8 breaks with his sword. Just now, a Dochi master. Because I was telling everyone about the existence of dragons. But no one believed me. So I went to bathe in the river, and took the time to reflect on what's happened these past few days. I originally thought the mercenary leader, John Doe, was a spy Turkan sent to the kingdom, and that the branch leader was also quite pitiful. For now, I still can't completely rule them out. After all I wanted was a mercenary who could serve as a bodyguard. But this woman introduced me to someone who hides his strength and possesses an 8th level Dochi power. Even the current commander of the Iron-Blooded Knights is only at the 8th level right now. In other words, he's a talent who would be in high demand anywhere. Yet now, he's leading an unknown mercenary group. Could it be that he has some sort of burden? I gaze at the full moon in the sky, lost in countless thoughts. But right now, more than uncovering his true identity, there's something more important I need to do. While resting in the inn and the carriage, I healed the damage caused by using Flame Spirit last time. I focused energy into my hands, and it feels like everything is fine now. But even so, I still need to go find the teacher. Although it's very likely that John Doe isn't a spy for Taka, I can't take him with me. After putting on my clothes, I decided to go ask him directly. When everyone saw me, they asked why I was soaking for so long, and I didn't answer him. At this moment, I held the sword in my hand. I told everyone, I've been worried about something, so I didn't feel like soaking in the water for too long. John asked me what it was. I looked at him sharply, and I asked him if he really didn't know. I point my sword at him. I pointed at an 8th tier Dochi master. What I'm worried about is why you, as an 8th tier Dochi holder, want to be a mercenary. The place I'm going is very important to me, and it holds great significance. So I don't plan to take someone like you, who is hiding things from me, with me. These words left the mercenary group members stunned. Their captain is actually an 8th Dan. What's going on? John Doe told him to shut up. Don't interrupt third young master. He then stood up and said, fine, let's assume I'm an 8th Dan. What does the young master want now? I'll tell him. I just told you an interesting story. Now it's your turn to tell me one. John asked me what would happen if I refused. I laughed and told him that if he couldn't persuade me, then he was done for. Then my gaze instantly turned icy. I asked him if he was a spy sent by the Turkan. The other members of the mercenary group were trembling under the murderous aura I was emanating. I told John that woman named Jian said to me that we should have a beer together next time we meet. If you are a spy, then he is also suspicious. This made John frown for a moment. He asked me why I suddenly mentioned Jian. I thought he was being stupid. After saying all that, he still didn't understand. I asked him, isn't he curious about that woman? Was the last thing she drank actually beer? After I said that, I gave an innocent smile. I asked him, so, isn't this getting interesting? Looking at the hesitant and panicked John in front of me, I've said all this, and yet he still hasn't triggered his fighting spirit. I don't know if he's on guard or hesitating, but at least he's being sensible. I can't control my strength right now, so I might end up being too rough, because the moment he uses his fighting spirit, I'll draw my sword. I ask him with a smile whether he wants to live or die. It's such a simple question. I'll give you 1 minute. I hope you can make a wise choice. At this moment, John recalled that day at Jane's inn. Jane told him that the third young master, who was almost abandoned by the Marquis family, was different from the rumors. Moreover, he sensed from the third young master's gaze that he seemed to be hiding a lot. Coincidentally, he asked me to help find a bodyguard. So, I wanted to investigate this mysterious third young master. Maybe that child can change our lives. What John Dao thought of this third young master was indeed different. Anyone who saw those eyes would never believe he was the fool abandoned by his family. Looking at the pure and innocent third young master before him, he had a bad feeling. It was as if he were a prey animal standing before a lion. Every instinct told him, this third young master is very dangerous. This youth was called the Sword Bone in his past life. He single-handedly destroyed a nation. And now, an intern knight actually wants to be his swordsmanship teacher. He may not know that the young man before him, if standing on the corpses he has slaughtered, could stand shoulder to shoulder with the heavens. Just a moment ago, I burst out laughing, and told the night chicken to hurry and get the sword. But the butler, Alan, asked me, young master, are you sure about this? He reminded me that the man just now was at level 4. While chewing my steak, I told him, so what if he's level 4? Alan, do you not have faith in me? He told me with some concern that he was afraid I'd get hurt, not that he was afraid I'd lose. Want to make a bet with me? Bet on whether I can win. Aaron thought it over carefully. He told me, young master, I don't think we should bet on winning or losing. We should bet on how many hits you'll take. I laughed again after hearing that. You're Alan. This bet is interesting. Quick, tell me, what should we wager? Alan said to me seriously, young master, do you really want to spar with him? You two are not on the same level. Hearing this, I looked at Aaron with a playful glance and said, if I get hit just once while sparring with little chick, how about we consider that a win for me? The condition was that the loser would grant the winner one wish. Aaron didn't say a word, just quietly listened as I bragged. Young master, what do you want me to do? Just give the order directly. I'm just a servant. Hearing Alan say that, it made me want to tease him even more. This Alan is truly amusing. I pointed my fork at him and said, I told you before, in this Marquis 8, I only trust my sister. And you, Alan, the butler. Hearing this, Alan, feeling acknowledged, was very happy inside. Yet he said to me, pointing at someone with a fork is quite impolite. At that moment, I smirked, and seriously told Alan that I would only sincerely request from those I trust, not command them. So, Alan, I leave it to you, sister. At this moment, Alan's eyes were filled with tears of gratitude. He looked at the young master, amazed that someone so young could speak so directly to his heart. Looking at me with a smile, he took a deep breath and thought, since the young master said so, I can only agree to you. Just then, there was a knock at the door. It was the little knight who came. He knelt before me, and addressed me as young master. He said his words and actions just now were too rude. He apologized for what he said earlier. If the young master needs a sparring partner, I am more than willing to serve. I looked at the little knight kneeling on the ground. I understand that although most people ignore me to my face like that guard in prison, they still insult me. And if he were to act directly, he would still be worried about the consequences. I reached out my hand and told him, how about we go somewhere where no one is around? Seeing his puzzled expression, I poked my finger on his forehead. I asked him, are you afraid of losing to me? At that moment, the little chick felt humiliated. He looked at me with a face full of anger. That's right, this is the look I wanted. He reluctantly told me he wasn't afraid. I asked him if he thought he would definitely win. He didn't say anything. But by the look on his face, I could tell it was fine. It's understandable for him to think that way. Forget it, Alan. Find a place where no one's around. Don't embarrass the kid in public. Alan quickly led us to an abandoned basement. I didn't expect there to be such an empty space in the mansion. Eagerly, I told the kid, let's start with the wooden swords. The kid handed me the sword with a hint of disdain. I gripped the sword tightly in my hand, ready in a battle stance. Little G praised me, saying, young master, your sword handling is quite skilled. Hearing this, I couldn't help but smile. I thought to myself, skilled? Ha, the people I killed in my past life could stack up to a whole race. I stood up there, shoulder to shoulder with the sky. I charged forward, sword in hand. And I shouted at him, chicken, even if it's a wooden sword, you still have to give it your all. Watch my attack. Calmly, chicken blocked my strikes. With a snap, my sword deflected. The chick watched as I was hit in the leg, thinking to himself, as expected, a rookie. How could he face a 4th-rank sword expert head-on like this? To avoid trouble for young Master Third, I'll just scare him a bit. Might as well give him a fright. Just as he was thinking that, my sword is already at his throat. The fight is over. You lost, Chick. Chick stares in disbelief at the scene before him. Even the butler, Aaron, looks at me in astonishment. I sternly tell Chick, if this were a real sword, you'd already be a corpse. Didn't I tell you to give it your all? This little chick looks confused. How did the 3rd young master end up here? Is this really the first time he's picked up a sword? The 3rd young master's sword is so fast. This abandoned girl who never stopped practicing swordsmanship actually defeated a powerful level 4 swordsman in just 3 moves. Just now, I pressed the sword against the knight's neck and told him that if this were a real sword, you'd be done for. In the eyes of the butler, Aaron, he thought his young master would be defeated by the knight in 1 move, and the training would end quickly. But unexpectedly, the young master remains so calm and composed. Each move is not only skillful, but also incredibly fierce. Alan understands that if the young master were holding a real sword, the knight within range would be dead for sure. He can't understand how the young master, who has never trained in swordsmanship or even held a sword, can be so powerful now. Is this what they call a genius? Even a genius couldn't reach this level, right? So I jokingly said to James, kid, you're only 25 this year, right? When did you start training? The kid stammered and told me, he's actually 23, and started training at 18. I couldn't help but praise him. You took 5 years to reach the 4th level. Although you started late, this pace is quite good. So I decided to explore his potential thoroughly. The little chick's potential is not bad. If he trains well, he could reach the 7th level, or even the 8th level. It's really ridiculous. Such talent is actually ordered by superiors to guard a child. I threw away the wooden sword. I picked up a real sword. I smiled at the chick and said, I'm a bit satisfied with you now. Now let's duel with real swords. But the chick still worriedly said to me, 3rd young master, you could get hurt using a needle sword. Hearing him say that left me speechless. Oh come on. Little guy, haven't you seen the situation clearly? Here's some advice for you. Confidence is good. Arrogance, though, is not. You probably think I just beat you by chance, right? That's why I call you little chicken. This time, I'll let you make the first move. If you can withstand 3 moves from me, then you win. At this moment, little chicken faced my provocation and became furious again. The wooden sword came at me fiercely. I also met it head-on. I didn't expect the little chick to be so easily provoked. No wonder he's still an intern knight. Just a moment before, our swords clashed. I merely made a light strike and knocked the little chick's sword to the ground. My sword was once again at his throat. I posed in victory to tell him, little chick, you've already died twice today. He asked me, incredulously, how I managed to do it. I pulled the sword away from his neck and told him how I did it. Even if I told you, you wouldn't understand. This is advanced technique. So, are you impressed, little chick? If not, we can have another match. And clearly, he wasn't impressed. Furiously, he ran over and grabbed a real sword. At that moment, I stuck my tongue out at Alan. Alan bet. But I won. Alan, the butler, sighed and told me he understood. I asked him, please take care of my sister. Can you do it? Aaron bowed deeply to me and swore with his life that he was willing to pay any price for it. At this moment, Xiaoji also took a real sword and said to me that he definitely wouldn't be the same as before. I raised my sword and made a starting stance. I laughed and said to Xiaoji, interesting. Interesting, you should use your fighting spirit. Xiao Ji said that he would use his fighting spirit to battle me. Xiao Ji responded that he had no problem with that. Young master, bring it on, he said. I raised my sword and struck down toward him. Once again, Xiao Ji blocked my strike with his blade. He couldn't understand why, even though he blocked my blow. He couldn't neutralize the third young master's attack. He only felt an intense, fierce force. After a while, he was so domineering. He could no longer hold on to his sword. It slipped from his hand and he staggered backward. At this moment, I was standing on top of him. Little chick, I haven't even put in my effort yet and you're down. Is it over so soon? But the little chick incredulously asked me, third young master? You really haven't practiced swordsmanship at all? Why do I have such great power? Yeah, the little chick in front of me was defeated by me. It will definitely overturn his worldview. It's actually quite simple. Usually, people distribute their fighting spirit evenly throughout their bodies to enhance their strength. But I'm different. I only concentrate my fighting spirit in one area. I raised my sword and asked him, Chick, do you really have to become a full knight? He didn't understand why the third young master was asking him this. What else could he do besides become a knight? What other choice did he have? I leisurely told him what else he could do. You could be a hunting dog that obeys only my orders. I promise it will be far more exciting than life as a full knight. Follow me. The most useless third young master of the Chicken clan has mastered the infinite sword technique. Even the powerful great swordsman couldn't withstand his attacks. After I knocked him to the ground, I asked him if he would like to be my loyal hound. In fear, he asked me, if I become your dog, what's in it for me? Hearing him say that, couldn't help but sigh. And told him, you don't even ask what to do. Just thinking about what you can get? But it's fine. Being my loyal dog can give you power and strength. Anything you want, I can give it to you. Listening to me say this, the chick asked me what exactly I needed him to do. I stared at the chick seriously, then told him to clear out anyone who stood in my way, and to protect my safety. My words shocked both the chick and Alan. The chick, lying on the ground, asked me in confusion, young master, who do you want me to kill? I lifted my foot off his back, and tell him to go kill my brother. I only give you 24 hours. Little chick, I hope you make the right choice. After finishing the couplet, Butler Allen helped me stretch my muscles. He asked me, young master, do you really believe in that gap knight? If the Marchioness finds out, things won't be easy. I heard Alan say this to me. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Alan, I don't believe in this gap knight. The Marchioness, that woman, is nothing to worry about. Although he really wants to get rid of me, he won't take action against me right now. His precious son is currently afraid of water. Besides, the Marquis wants to use me as leverage to control my sister. Even if he intends to harm me, do you think the Marquis would just stand by? At this point, I let out a cold laugh. Besides, who in this world could kill me? Even the Fairy Lord, or the Dragon Lord. The Orc King and these other powerful beings are helpless against me. Thinking about how the Duchess wants to harm me. It's laughable, truly laughable. What can a mere shrew do to me? Once Alan is done with me, I will stand up and confidently tell him, Alan, unless I want to die myself, no one can kill me. Alan asked me what I really wanted to do. I looked at Alan and told him that if he wanted to know, he should secretly follow me tomorrow. Alan asked me in confusion if I wasn't planning to take him along. I firmly told him that he couldn't come with me, and reminded Alan to follow me secretly. Alan nodded at me to show he understood. Meanwhile, little G was storming toward the Duke's mansion. He thought to himself, although the third young master is a genius, expecting me to act like a dog is just absurd. Unlike the second young master, he lacks a powerful family as his backing. Not a single retainer supports him. Little G recalled the humiliation from the third young master today, and bitterly resented how he had let himself be so frightened by a child. He couldn't help but let out a sinister laugh. If I were to tell the Marquise about this, it would truly be a great achievement. That wicked Marquise actually made my sister drink an 82-year-old expired Lafite, and she wouldn't even let her refuse. She even intends to use my sister as a tool for gaining power. After she got my sister married off, she laughed and said, her brother Jack actually wants to keep a novice knight for himself. Still too young. He would never have dreamed that this knight belongs to his brother. Does he think he can take me down just by relying on a little momentum? It's truly ridiculous. After hearing this, the sister did not refute. She could only smile and agree that Jack was really naive. Because if she sided with Jack, The family's oppression of her brother would become even more severe. The Marchioness praised that he was understanding, and promised to find him a marriage partner as soon as possible. Then he went to his sister. With a grim tone, he told her, "If you fall for a man or do such things, I'll make sure you die a horrible death." Meanwhile, I was cultivating my battle aura, and advanced a level within 5 hours. Now I have the strength of a second-level swordsman. This left butler Aaron. It's hard to believe that it took him 2 months to advance from first rank to second rank. Yet, the young master only needed 5 hours. I lay in bed and asked Aaron, "What time is it now?" Aaron took out his 24K gold pocket watch and checked. He told me, "Young master, it's currently 5:48 in the afternoon." I quickly got up, surprised to find it was already dinner time. Aaron quickly asked if he should prepare steak for you as usual, young master. But I shook my head, indicating it wasn't necessary. I need to go to the Marquis' estate. They should be starting dinner there by now. Aaron, don't stop me. I'm just going to say goodbye. After all, I'll be away from home for a while. At this moment, everyone at the Marquis' estate is dining. The dining table was completely silent. At that moment, I burst in, kicking the door open with a bang, and shouted, "Why is it so lifeless while we're eating? Are we facing the end of the country?" My sister was shocked, and my father was furious at my rudeness. But I casually told them, "I am, after all, from a Marquis family. Honorable third young master. I hope there's still a place for me here. A family should sit together and eat peacefully." So, I sat down. I grabbed a chicken leg and started chewing on it heartily. Not bad, not bad. Tastes pretty good. It would be even better if it were Orland style, but compared to what Aaron did, it's almost the same. My behavior displeased the second brother across from me and the Marchioness. I ignored their hostile stares. I patted my stomach to show I was full, just as I was licking the chicken grease off my fingers. My father called my name, "Jack. Did you come here to say something?" Hearing my father's words, I let out a cold laugh, and I told him with authority that I had something to say. I really do have something to say. Otherwise, why would I come to such a lifeless place? Don't you agree? Father, this so-called useless third young master has comprehended the essence of the sword in just 5 minutes. Just because he knows that his sister, whom he values above all else, is once again threatened and humiliated. He kicked open the door of the Marquis' mansion. Then he casually sat down at the dining table. He tore off a chicken leg. He tried hard to ignore the cold stares from the table. My father saw the scene. He angrily asked me if I wanted to say something. At that moment, my cold gaze told him he guessed correctly. Otherwise, why would I come to this dump? When my father heard this, he scolded me for being so rude. I shot back, asking why he had to be so serious. Meals with family should be joyful. We should all be smiling. Seeing the tension between us, my sister hurriedly tried to pull me away, saying, but I raised my hand to stop her. And I told him, "Sister, to be quiet for a moment." Then I glared at my Marquis father, contemptuously indicating that I would go to school tomorrow. If anyone dares to bully my sister again, then I'll have no choice but to twist off their head. After saying that, I grinned slightly, and told my father I wasn't joking. The Marchioness's face was filled with anger upon hearing this. She couldn't understand how I dared to speak this way. Father told me not to worry. No one would bully my sister. I was surprised. He agreed to my request. But aside from that, there's still a score I need to settle. Since someone bullied my sister, then my brother let you bear my wrath. I heard that after I beat you up that time, you've been afraid of water. You don't dare to drink anything. Is that true? Then you must really like this bottle of 82 Lafite. Saying this, I poured the whole bottle of red wine onto the table. My brother looked on, terrified, as if he was thrown back into the fear I once held him under that day. At this point, the Marchioness couldn't hold back any longer. She scolded me angrily, calling me uncultured, saying I was outrageously disrespectful, and making a scene here, but I ignored her. I turned and asked everyone present where the barking was coming from. Seeing this scene, my sister was restless. He couldn't understand how his usually weak brother could become so strong. But my actions and insulting words made the Marchioness tremble all over. He gritted his teeth and said fiercely that he would not let me go. After hearing his words, I stood frozen for 2 seconds. Then I turned around and told him, "Just you. Ha, let me see how you won't let me go." After I left, the Marchioness flew into a rage, cursing me. Even the maids in the house were saying they never expected the seemingly sweet third young master to anger her like that. Apart from a scolding from my sister who chased after me, Nothing else happened the entire night. Soon, it was the next day, and I headed to school. Even I didn't expect that as the third young master of a marquee household, so few people would see me off. This carriage isn't bad, but the knight escorting me looks sullen and defiant. He has the strength of a 6th-tier warrior. The way he looks at me is shifty. Something's off. I know he's acting on the orders of the Marchioness. He plans to make a move on me midway. I have no idea what kind of choice the little chick traveling with me has made. My sister next to me said she was worried about me going alone. She feared the Marchioness might plot something against me, and planned to personally escort me to school. I just smiled, and told her it wasn't necessary. Many things will change in the future. And, sister, please trust me. Alan, you should go back too. Don't forget what I told you that day. Don't worry. He absolutely won't be able to kill me. After my sister and Alan left, I fell asleep in the carriage. However, the strongest knight in our ranks, a 6th-rank warrior, looked at me as I slept, with a saintly murderous intent in his eyes. This youngest son of the Marquis family, treated as a mere commoner, actually mastered the Alpha Strike in just 10 minutes, and even held a sword to threaten a swordmaster at the 8th rank, demanding him to reveal his true identity. But John Doe, the 8th-rank master, couldn't understand how this young man could see his rank. Could it be that the sword told him? John Doe then shook his head, indicating it was impossible. He believes that even if the sword speaks, it will tell him in advance. But looking at the boy in front of him pointing the sword at him, he curiously asked if he really is at the 8th Dan level. Then, young master, do you have the strength to kill me? Yet he saw in my eyes, and couldn't understand why a child's gaze could carry such heavy killing intent. This boy is really just a child. Should I just speak the truth? Or should he keep it hidden? If he were to say it, how would he even begin? The suffocating feeling reminded him of countless decisions he faced during his years as a mercenary. Then, he closed his eyes and pondered for a moment. He had always been lucky. This time, he decided to trust his instincts. And at that moment, I called out, "Time's up. Since you are unwilling to speak, I can only take action." Just as I gathered my fighting spirit, I heard John begin to speak and paused. He asked if I understood my sister's current situation. I lowered my sword. I gestured for him to continue. It turns out the situation is like this. John Doe told me a love story between a noblewoman and a commoner. The story wasn't long. The plot was quite simple. He met Jane when he reached the 7th level of Dochi, and she was 19. They fell in love at first sight. To this day, they are still deeply in love. It was only after hearing it that I understood. No wonder this woman is still unmarried, even though the two of them are worlds apart in status. John is an 8th rank aura fighter. He should be quite renowned in Tursland, and he has an impressive appearance. Yet he chose to become a mercenary. Did he get into trouble? But judging by that woman's personality, it seems her family isn't very interested in power. I asked John Doe, is that the reason? He became the head of the Adventurers Guild branch in this small town? And you work as a mercenary under him. So, did you approach me because there's profit in it? I looked at John Doe as I spoke. That's true. I don't know if I should trust him, but it's the kind of story you could make up on the spot. I looked at John with the same expression, and asked him if he remembered the story about the dragon he just told them. Why did the Torcan Empire raise little dragons? A Grandmaster refers to someone with a level 10 rank, but even those Grandmasters don't know. In the depths of this world, there exists an even higher level. That level involves not using battle energy, but rather the sole power of monstrous transcendence. Everyone was surprised by what I said. They all showed shocked expressions. I then told them that in 2 years, the Knight Heinz, who guards the royal family of the Tulkan Empire, he will break through the limits of a Grandmaster and become the strongest swordsman on the continent. He will revive the forgotten history of the Transcenders. But the irony is, this guy didn't become a Transcender through his own power. Half of his bones and blood were replaced with those of a divine dragon. Because of this mad act, he became a winged man, the dragon monster. John Doe doesn't understand what all this has to do with the current situation. I tell him, the Turkan Empire sent countless spies to gather intelligence, to confirm if other nations have divine dragons. I look at John Doe, and seeing his response, I feel he believes I'm not making this up. So, my doubts about him disappear, and tell him to remember to send me an invitation to his wedding. But just as I was passing him by, I sensed a hint of killing intent. I didn't hesitate for a second. I drew my sword and thrust it toward John Doe. At that moment, the 8th stage Master John Doe hadn't even unsheathed his sword. I told him, "I'm the one who suspected you first, so I'm sparing your life, but this is the last time. If I sense killing intent from you again, it won't just be you. I'll take down everyone here." At that moment, a panicked teammate quickly urged me to put down my sword and talk things over. I sighed helplessly. The relationship that had finally eased up has become tense again, but there's nothing we can do about it. After all, we're just in an employer-employee relationship. This so-called brainless Marquis Kong, the third young master, suddenly got the urge to tell ghost stories to the mercenary group. Everyone has clearly gotten used to this young master, always telling such sensational stories. If it weren't for his noble status, he would have probably slapped him long ago. But the mercenary group doesn't understand that as a master at the 8th stage, the leader has the strength to become a prominent figure. So why is he living a humble life as a mercenary? But thinking about how the leader saved their lives, they've all lived together for so many years. He also understands that the captain may have his own difficulties. He even envisions that one day his mercenary group could become one of the top groups, and their captain would become the king of mercenaries in the world. Only John knows in his heart that the king of mercenaries is not something a mere rank 8 can aspire to. Even the masters have at least 4 ranks. They quickly moved on from this topic. They were ready to continue listening to my stories. At that moment, I patiently started telling them a story from 23 years ago. There was a simple-minded guy with well-developed limbs, who had an unspeakable relationship with the fairy lord. Everyone said they had never heard of it before. It immediately piqued their interest. They got ready to watch the drama unfold. I thought to myself, that makes sense. After all, these two races are supposed to be enemies. They also often waged war. These two races are known as the twin evils of the Beastwood Forest. They can also be referred to as the guardians of the forest. They are two races so opposed, yet their leaders have fallen in love. Originally, the two races coexisted harmoniously in the forest. Even during the early days when the forest overlord, Black Knight, became the half-orc lord, they still lived together peacefully. John Dow and his team couldn't wait to ask me what had happened behind. I couldn't help but grin. I told them not to rush. The reason is that everyone knew about the relationship between the Dark Knight and the Fairy Lord, whether human, fairy, or beastman. Even though they are different races, their basic desires are the same. They all have the same obsession with power. Due to dissatisfaction from both factions with their lords, they secretly formed an alliance using their relationship as an excuse. They plotted to drive out their respective lords. However, in the end, their ambitions were not realized. Until today, the lords of the two factions remain unchanged, but they have given up on love and chosen to strengthen their own factions. Upon hearing this, John found today's story somewhat interesting, but he wasn't sure if it was true or not. There were, however, some things he knew. A few years back, the relationship between orcs and goblins wasn't as tense as it is now, and starting about 10 years ago, these two lords gained the title of the Twin Terrors. The fairies secretly learned combat techniques known only to the orcs, and the orcs secretly learned the fairies' elven tree magic, the most abundant in the forest. Both races stole each other's secrets. Thus, the two races began to oppose each other. At the same time, they both became symbols of the forest. At that moment, I stomped hard on John's foot and warned him, if you get caught by a half-orc or a fairy in the future, you can tell them this story. Maybe that will buy you some extra time to live. John didn't know if it was true or not, but he said if that day ever came, he would definitely do that. After saying this, John felt hungry, and personally handed me a plate of snacks to eat. Watching me eat with such gusto, he proudly told me he made it himself today. However, what I didn't know at the time was that news had already reached my father that all the soldiers escorting me had died in the mountains, and based on the search results, it was confirmed. The soldiers were killed by advanced magic. This gave my father a headache, because at this time, the Iron Blood Knights were dispatched to the Beast Forest. Now this kind of thing has happened. He pondered whether the mastermind behind this was the king or the duke, so he immediately issued an order for a thorough investigation. He also asked his subordinates. His youngest son had been missing for a long time. Could he still be alive? His subordinate informed him that no body of the third young master had been found. Maybe he escaped. He thought that if Jack wasn't dead, then he'd be the only witness. They had to find him immediately. After his men left, the father thought about his most useless son, who unexpectedly turned out to be of some use. The third young master of the Marquis's household, treated as worthless. He managed to learn the art of lightness skill in just 1 minute. All because he has something important to do today. He's heading into the deep mountains to find someone. His own teacher. Just half an hour ago, the mercenaries escorted me to Rock Mountain. I also gave them a thick bag of gold coins as payment. John took it, feeling the heavy weight in his hands. It was at least 5 pounds. As expected, he opened it to find a bag full of glittering gold coins. He quickly said to me, "Young master, you've given too much." But I just shrugged. To me, it was nothing more than the price of a stuffed egg pancake. Consider it a tip for you all. And I even doubted you before. Think of it as compensation. I'm grateful for your company along the way. Otherwise, I would have been bored to death. With that, I smiled and bid farewell to these lovely mercenaries. But to my surprise, they stood there without moving. A bunch of grown men, reluctant to part. Then John said to me, "Young master, there are some things I probably shouldn't tell you, but I still want to share them." I asked him what those things were with confusion. John no longer hesitated. He told me that being a mercenary isn't as bad as one might think. Although I don't know everything about you, young master, I feel like I know a few things. You're the third young master of the Marquis household, treated like a nobody. You have no one supporting you. And I've seen many noble sons like you who lack favor. Their outcomes are usually not good. After hearing this, I glanced at the mercenaries behind him. I asked Johann if he intended for me to become a mercenary. At that moment, Johann placed a hand on my shoulder, telling me not to joke around. "Young master," I just said, "that mercenaries aren't that bad. As long as they don't take dangerous jobs, they can travel the world and live a comfortable life. No other profession can offer that besides being a mercenary. And right now, I ask John, those people behind you may not know, but you should be well aware that if I wanted to kill you that night, you would definitely be dead." I know John understands this. Even if I didn't use my soul technique at the time, he, with his 8 ranks, could clearly sense danger. And John said that precisely because he knows this, he feels it's a pity, because the young master truly is a great talent. And tell me that he has already forgotten what happened that night. After all, as someone who makes a living on the edge, sometimes one might conceal their true abilities from those around them. If the young master wants to pursue this matter, I am willing to accept any punishment from the young master. And I smiled, indicating that it didn't matter. Then I leaned closer to his ear. I told him a little secret, that something big would happen on the Western continent within a few years. I told John Doe he must hide. He was puzzled. I didn't bother explaining, because when the time comes, John Doe will understand on his own. And he'll definitely realize this is truly a terrifying thing. I told John Doe not to risk his life for a few gold coins. After all, life is more valuable than money. After saying that, I patted John Doe on the shoulder, telling him to remember my words well. After saying goodbye to them, I entered the dense forest alone. As he watched my back, John Doe called out for me to wait. I looked back. John placed his hand on his chest. And with a determined look, he said, "Sir, may I know your name?" I smiled. He clearly knows my name. But I understand his intention. "I'm Jack." "Then what is your name?" This time he no longer concealed it, but directly revealed his real name, Dita Timo. I made a note to remember him. We will meet again if fate allows. In order to hurry and see the teacher sooner, I channeled my energy into my feet, and walked above the forest. It only landed steadily just before reaching the destination. Now my control over my fighting energy has reached mastery. Even my hairstyle didn't get messed up. I crossed a few small hills, and arrived at an entrance to a cave. I thought to myself, maybe because I'm still young, even this short distance left me gasping for breath. After entering the cave, I used magic to light up the darkness. I'm certain this is the place. Once we pass through this wall, we'll reach where the master is. In my past life, I stumbled upon this place by accident. Back then, I was weak and helpless, cornered by Marquis Fu with nowhere to go. This was my situation at that time. Now everything is completely different. I bit open a bottle of potion. I splashed it on the wall. Then I slowly pulled out the accessory from my waist. I placed the sword in my palm, and I tightly gripped the blade with my hand. Blood flowed out profusely. The third young master of the Marquis household, known for relying on others, actually accepted a lowly who's only 1.2 meters tall as his teacher. In my past life, when I was desperate, I hid in this cave. I thought of ending my life here. but I was too weak to go through with it. Blood and tears fell to the ground. And because of that, it became the turning point. After they merged, the stone gate suddenly collapsed. And right here, I met the woman who changed my life. In this life, carrying the memories of my past, I found this place again. With one strike, I shattered the stone gate. As I delved deeper, I don't know why, I feel a little nervous. But it's not surprising. Even in my past life, I haven't seen my teacher for 10 years. I don't know how much distance I've finally traveled. I found my teacher from my past life. Just like in the last life, he was still bound by chains. And his appearance was also unusual. At that moment, I slowly called out, "Master." My sudden appearance did not startle him at all. He stared at me silently for 30 seconds. I also recalled his teachings from my past life. In this world, whether human, dragon, or half-beast, there is meaning in everything. Yet my teacher before me has actually lived for 400 years. His body and soul have already separated. He used magic to bind the two together. But my teacher's makeshift solution has ultimately failed since he met me. The teacher lived for another 10 years. In this life, I met the teacher again. I also clearly knew that he only had 13 years left. Then I heard the teacher's voice again. He asked me coldly why I called him teacher. I could no longer suppress my longing. My voice turned choked with emotion. He didn't know who I really was. "What's your purpose for being here?" At that moment, I decided to tease him a little. I said, "Take a guess." He thought I was joking with him after hearing that. Then, with a cold gaze, he told me he wouldn't ask a second time, "Who exactly are you?" I squatted in front of him and grinned, completely unaware of his growing anger. "Teacher, you've gotten better at controlling your temper. I miss you so much." He pondered in confusion. He couldn't remember when he had such a disciple, so he asked me if I knew who he was. I told him, of course. How could I not know? The time spent with the master in my past life, growing from knowing nothing to becoming an adult, was not a dream. But now only I remember these. At that moment, I looked up. With determination, I told the teacher, "You are the great hero Valentin Milos, who ended the glorious era and began the era of humanity. And I am your disciple from the future." But it was obvious that upon hearing my words, the teacher doesn't believe him. He asked me if I knew why he doesn't like storytellers. After spending so much time with the teacher in my past life, how could I not know? I smiled and told him the answer. That is, storytellers always distort the facts. After hearing my answer, he asked me another question. In this situation, what would he say? I scratched my head, indicating that I understood. He must be telling me to get lost. The teacher thinks I have the ability to see through people's hearts, but clearly still doesn't trust me. Seeing his expression really made me sad too. Then I'll have to use this method. To prove myself, I drew my sword, and quickly aimed at the teacher. With fighting energy swirling around me, "Please forgive my rudeness, teacher." This so-called foolish young marquis, seen as weak by others, actually learned the sword soul technique in just 10 seconds. Just to prove to my teacher that I am his disciple from a past life, I decided to use my soul skills to destroy the chains binding my teacher. "Look, I'm going to take action." My teacher told me to wait a moment, because if I destroy the chains, this place will collapse. And I said I already know that. It's precisely because of that. That's why I must destroy this place. After saying that, I immediately charged at my teacher with my sword. The one who trapped my teacher here is Teslan, hailed by everyone as a hero. He once promised my teacher that he would return one day, but that despicable man never came back. And just like that, 50 years passed. After waiting in vain for decades, my teacher finally realized he'd been abandoned. But now, I have returned once again, carrying the memories of my past life. I will absolutely not let the teacher be bound by chains again. I swung my sword toward the chains. The teacher was astonished by my strength. Can this strange young man in front of him really do it? All we heard was a swoosh. I swept past him. The sound of chains shattering followed. The teacher couldn't believe it. The chain made of dragon bones was actually cut, just as the teacher was about to fall. My hand, filled with spiritual power, was already ready to catch him. At the same time, I shouted, "Teacher, be careful." Then I held the teacher in my arms. I told him that I was different from that guy, Teslan. I wouldn't be untrustworthy. Instead, I would prove myself through actions. But there's no time for teacher to be moved right now. He tells me the roof is about to collapse. I tell teacher to hold on tight. Now, I'm going to lead him out. Watching each tear fall from his eyes, My gaze shows no panic, only determination. Then, I slowly raise my sword. As I recite the sword incantation, an overwhelming, icy sword aura fills the entire blade. This is my strongest defensive sword technique. The steel-like aura blocks any rocks from approaching us. At the same time, this is also what my teacher taught me as a swordmaster. Then, I thrust the sword firmly into the ground. I unleashed the technique once again. In an instant, the entire cave was leveled to the ground. The teacher couldn't help but ask me who I really was. At such a young age, how could I have the aura of a sword soul? I tightly hugged the teacher. I told him I was his disciple from the future. I had already learned all of this. Then I smiled at him. For the next 13 years, let's travel the world together. After I finished speaking, the teacher held my cheeks with both hands. It was a habitual gesture of the teachers, meant to check if someone was lying. At that moment, I was exhausted, and collapsed onto the ground. But the teacher's doubts remained. Sitting over me, the teacher said that forcing relationships with others is very rude. I can no longer explain things to him. Once again, I introduced myself to him. My name is Jack. I am your disciple from a past life. In this life, please take care of me. The foolish girl, who even dogs would bark at, actually went to the market behind her lowly master. I don't even know why. My master hasn't said a word to me in 5 days. It was only after I asked him that he told me. At first, he thought I was a descendant of the Teslan family. But he realized he was wrong. Because it's impossible for someone so young to control soul power. When I heard my teacher's words, I understood he wanted me to tell him the answer myself. And if I couldn't answer, he'd probably give me a beating like in my past life. I told my teacher, even for a genius in Dochi mastery, only a very few can wield soul power. The teacher affirmed that was correct. Even so, he noticed my soul harbors a great deal of murderous intent. He could sense that, though I appear harmless, my hands are stained with more blood than his. The teacher asked if I'd ever wondered why such a burden would fall upon me. Only now did I realize that this is what Master has been pondering these days. Then, scenes from my past life flashed through my mind, defeating an entire nation's million-strong army alone. But I still don't understand why I was reborn. I told Master this isn't something I wished for. Perhaps someone granted me this chance. Maybe that person has other motives. But why think so much about it now? Live in the moment. If there really is a purpose, then the mastermind will come looking for me someday. After all, right now, for me, being with you is what matters most. The teacher looked speechless after hearing that, and praised me for my smooth talk. And I asked what I should do next. I played with the big yellow dog. I indicated that I needed to find someone who could serve me first. After all, this is something that must be done, because of the battles with those family's guardian knights. And the night 5 days ago when my teacher was taken away. The backlash from using soul power caused me immense pain. I even secretly drank 2 bottles of high-grade potions without my teacher knowing. Even so, I've been feeling unwell for almost 5 days. I'm now extremely weak. So, I need reliable allies to protect me. Just when I was about to take my teacher to buy a new sword, I bumped into a girl at a street corner. She was holding her head, apologizing, clearly in a hurry. Just as I was about to help her up, I just mentioned I needed someone willing to risk everything for me. Then, I found an extraordinary person. So I immediately took out my money pouch, and asked if he wanted to join me. Seeing his utterly confused face, I tempted him. If he agreed, everything in this pouch would be his. He took the bag and felt it was at least 5 pounds. So he quickly expressed that he couldn't accept so much money. I smiled and asked him how much he thought was appropriate. After thinking for a long time, he told me 1 silver coin would be enough. After I handed him the silver coin, he hurriedly gave me his flowers. Then he bowed to me and ran away quickly. Watching his figure, I understand this person is the uncut jade I'd been looking for. The master also sees his exceptional nature. He mentioned that he hasn't seen a vampire in a long time. The master asked if I chose him as a companion because I knew his identity. I told the master that I didn't know he was a vampire. I just recognized his potential. If properly nurtured, he could possibly reach rank 10 in the future. Master scolded me for not recognizing his identity. He sighed, saying there's still so much more he needs to teach me. I told him he must live a long life, to stay by my side and guide me well. And so, amidst our laughter, he gradually recalled that girl from earlier. It seemed like he'd seen her somewhere before. It was as if something came back to him. He decided to take me to meet someone. A fool who everyone would trample twice if they saw him. There he was, crouched by someone's window begging for food. Not long ago, my teacher told me that vampires are the only race able to rival the divine dragon. 10 years ago, the two clans started a war. The vampire clan just wanted to leave the forest of beasts. But in the end, the dragon clan emerged victorious. The remnants of the vampires took advantage of the chaos to escape the beast forest. The child I just collided with might be the daughter of a vampire who escaped the forest. But I don't care about her identity. I told my master that I was determined. I want her to be my first subordinate. But my teacher thinks I'm cruel. I actually let an innocent child get caught up in my plans. Although I didn't quite see it that way. The teacher does make a fair point. After all, 400 years ago, he made a verbal pact with the leaders of all non-human races, led by the dragon tribe, stating that no non-human race should interfere in human affairs. Since then, all non-human races relocated to the forest of magical beasts. But as time has passed, most of the kings who made the pact have passed away. After all, no matter how powerful a race is, it cannot conquer time. Even though their descendants no longer need to honor the promise, they still cannot leave the forest. Because the dragon race, having lived over 2,000 years, must uphold the pact. Thus, they continue to suppress other races, preventing any other race from taking a single step out of the beast forest. The teacher's judgment was correct, but he should have wiped out the entire dragon clan from the very beginning. When I learned about this in my past life, I eradicated the entire dragon clan. Now, I look at my teacher with a smile, and hold his hand, reassuring him not to blame himself. No matter what, I am his disciple, and I'll handle everything for him. The teacher said to just do as I suggested. He also warned me never to give him my acupoints. I don't understand what the teacher means by that. After all, he's still a child. A child needs to eat nutritious food. At this moment, the vampire girl walking through the crowd was still thinking about the strange person she met today and how he spoke to her. He even wanted her to be his companion. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken to her so kindly. After drinking this half-orc's blood, mother at home should feel revitalized. He also recalled his mother's earlier warning, to never drink human blood. More precisely, he must only drink the blood given by his uncle. No other blood is allowed. When he returned home, his mother, lying in bed, told him they had a guest. This amazed him. Who would dare to visit a vampire's home? At that moment, I appeared at his window, smiling and asking why it took him so long to come back. He was shocked to see me. Why was I in his house? At that moment, the teacher slowly said, "Sit up. Let me take a good look at your face." The person lying in bed slowly sat up. It was a beautiful woman. After studying her face, the teacher said, "It's been a long time. But what happened to you? The holy maiden of the vampire clan, Vivian Royalen, huh? Check." Get behind me like I'm 23, good. Before Mikey was on Nikes, you should bet on me.